All right, so the scouting combine's over. You got free agency kicking off in like 2 weeks. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Giants Brawl podcast brought to you by the Brawl Network. As always, I'm your host for this evening, Usaid Kosho. You can follow me on Twitter at Usaid Kosho. Got my left-hand man because he's on the left side of the screen today, Mike Trainer. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Trainer MFT. You can follow Anthony Rivardo on Twitter at Anthony_Rivardo. Go check out his work on Empire Sports Media as well. And then we got our Giants personality on. That's what I call him. He was surprised that I called him that yesterday. Will is on today with us. You can follow him on Twitter at 27. That is TWE. How do you spell your Twitter handle, man? Because I'm flicking out right now.
TWENTEE. There are two E's at the end, and then the number 7.
All right, so we had a crazy crazy episode last week because Anthony spilled water on his laptop. Mike was pissed off at Barkley, but how you guys doing? Because things seem to have calmed down.
My R button on my keyboard keeps double tapping for some reason. Every time I try to write like Ron, it'll be RRON instead of RON. So I definitely screwed it up when I spilled that water. But other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, Barkley's passed out for the night, man. He had a long day. I had to bite a couple Jet fans on the walk home today.
Okay.
I'm doing
All right.
great. My D and my 8 on my keyboard aren't quite as one touch, one tap as I'd like them to be, but I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's got keyboard problems. But anyway, let's get right into it, guys. So Evan Engram, I know there's the picture that's been circulating on Twitter the last couple of days. He's still in the walking boot. Now, I know here's the thing. Dan Schneider of CBS Sports tweeted he doesn't expect Engram to be he's heard nothing about him potentially being moved, but this is a guy that was a Jerry Reese pick towards the end of the Jerry Reese era. Now, he's not going to be healthy until training camp, or at least that's what they expect. So, Mike, I'll start with you. What do you think the Giants should do with him?
Hey, listen, I love Evan Engram. The question is he really a tight end or not? Is he a wide receiver? You know what I mean? So you got to figure out like a spot for him. I know Judge likes the versatility of these guys, so maybe you move him outside a little bit more than he has been in the past. The injuries are a concern. It has been in his career, but eventually, guys eventually get over that, hopefully. I would like to give him, I won't trade him. You got to give him, another year at least under Joe Judge to see what he has. Maybe he stays healthy, especially on his contract right now. I mean, what are we really going to get for him? A 4th-round pick? I mean, is that worth it? Get a 4th-round pick and an unknown guy? I mean, you kind of know what you're getting with Evan Engram when he's on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think Engram is way too versatile and talented to just give up on. I don't think you want to give up on that type of talent. I know he's not the best blocker in the world, but when he's healthy, he's such an excellent receiving threat and can be such an X factor in the offense. And I think you should at least hold on to him and give him another season, pick up his 5th-year option, and then maybe we can consider moving him. But it would take a lot for me to be comfortable moving on from Evan Engram at this point. We would need pretty high draft picks for me to be happy about it.
So at the risk of being too repetitive, because I know people don't like it, when we have the same conversation over and over again. The last time I was on this podcast, we brought up Evan Engram and what we'd want to do with Evan Engram. And I want to speak more generally and say that there's a misconception with fans that if you're evaluating players, a player's really good, he's untouchable, and then he's not quite that good, you keep him. And then if he's not quite that good, you got to trade him. It doesn't work that way because, anytime you trade somebody and you think it's a perfect time to get rid of them, you're trading him to somebody who thinks it's a perfect time to acquire him and his contract. And after last October, in a broken year, in a season that wasn't going anyway, Adam Schefter, who's about as credible as it gets in the football world, tweeted that the Giants have said that Evan Engram is untouchable. And now 6 months later, after one other injury, we've given up on him and we're going to get rid of him for the highest bidder. That is not the communication of a functional football team. And there's a maxim that people say in sports: real trades move in silence. And to an extent, I really believe that. Nobody really talked about JPP before he was gone. Nobody talked about Alec Ogletree before it became that way. The Odell Beckham trade was a little bit of an exception just because Odell was an exception to everything in his career. But real trades do move in silence. And I'm inclined to see that, to think that something like this really doesn't mean a whole lot. Maybe it's somebody trying to see what they can get out of Engram and fishing for some sort of rumor. But I wouldn't get rid of him for nothing. I think, worst case scenario, he's sidelined and we don't get a lot out of him. I mean, Jerry Reese did say this was the next Jordan Reed, so you got to take the good and the bad with that. But I do think that even if they don't trade him, there's just as good of a chance it's going to be like a Landon Collins situation where the comp pick's going to be almost as good as the trade return itself.
Yeah, and definitely, I agree. I think let's be real. Okay, so Shermer was just too damn dysfunctional. He could not do anything correctly. Now you have Joe Judge coming in, and Judge has pretty much established that no one's going to get off easy here. So he's going to make Engram earn the starting spot. Granted, I can tell y'all right now, I think Evan Engram is going to be tight end number 1 going in next season. And he should be, because this is still a roster that's like accumulating talent. But there's no point in giving up on a guy who, when healthy, has proven that he can play at a high level and be like a security blanket for Daniel Jones, similar to like what Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce are for the Chiefs and Eagles. That's the importance of having a good tight end. I think if you get him healthy, let's see what he can do under this coaching staff, because he's due to hit free agency, I think, in 2021 or 2022, because he's got the 5th-year option.
He's got plenty of time, man. Take advantage of him now. Like, you got to have these guys on these low contracts in order to build a good team and spend the money elsewhere. I mean, we'll get to the free agents later, like who we guys, we really want. But I mean, save it. Why do we have to spend the money in that same position, when we got somebody there that, could possibly stay healthy and have a good year?
Yeah, and I know the report that Will mentioned where the Giants considered Evan Engram to be untouchable. Me personally, I don't think that he should be necessarily untouchable, but like I said, the price should be pretty steep because he's a very talented player. I don't want to give up on him. I just hope that he gets healthy and he can ball out next year with Daniel.
Yeah, the Giant, the Patriots obviously have their reputation of being willing to move on from players at the perfect times. The Giants have not shown that same amount of self-awareness. I would say that in regards to Engram, that he was drafted in a really unfortunate situation. He was coming into a dysfunctional offense with all sorts of playmakers who were really overrated by the casual fans, given how good they would have looked on given how good they looked on paper. I still remember that Bleacher Report tweet with Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard, and Odell. But he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He hasn't been able to be a part of a winning culture, and it's really, in my opinion, it hasn't been his fault. And Bill James, I've mentioned this before. Bill James has that maxim that the bad teams blame their star players for losing, and I think Ingram's really been dealt a pretty tough hand. And I'd love to see him, now that we do have what looks like a little bit of coaching stability, a mobile quarterback, which I think is really good for him in his game. Give him a chance to get healthy and give him one more chance, because nobody's going to give up a first-round pick for a guy if there's rumors that he can't stay on the field. With regards to what Mike was saying earlier about if he's more comfortable as a wide receiver or as a tight end, a lot of what makes Engram so powerful is that matchup nightmare when they line up that extra when they line him up against a linebacker rather than a defensive back. And the Giants don't have that kind of matchup option from their wide receivers of a guy who could possibly out physical somebody. So there really is a demand for his skill set. So which is why we need him, and we need him healthy.
Agree. 100%.
Yeah. Definitely. So we just hope, Evan Ingram's healthy. Mike is drinking and potting again, like G. Stelio of the Bears, bro, who didn't come on again this week, bro. We got to get G on sometime. But moving on, I mean, look, the Giants fan base, everyone's been buzzing about Isaiah Simmons forever now. He blew away the combine. We've had the Chase Young versus Isaiah Simmons debate on here. But, man, his 40-yard dash time, does this make him a lock at 4th overall, or do you think that the Giants should consider maybe trading back and potentially collecting more picks, or going ahead and just selecting an offensive tackle like a Wills or a Becton?
I guess I'll go. I don't think anybody's 40-yard dash time should lock them into any draft pick. I don't think it's really that useful of a measurement. I think it was highly impressive, and all of his on-field workouts were highly impressive. He crushed every drill, but it was kind of expected. We knew Isaiah Simmons was going to crush every drill because he's such a versatile and talented athlete. And I mean, I think he should be the pick at number 4 if they don't trade down or if Chase Young isn't there. But if Chase Young is there, I think he's a more valuable prospect to draft. But I think Simmons, I mean, he can't do anything more than he's already done. I mean, like he crushed the combine, and if you watch his game film, you could see the man played over 100 snaps at 5 different positions. He's a positionless player who can literally change your defense. So I definitely think he would be the right pick at number 4 if they decide to go that way. But if they want to trade back, take an offensive tackle, I wouldn't complain if they got enough in return to do that too.
See, that's where I agree and disagree with you, Ann. Like, I know we had this discussion before, but if Chase Young falls to us and we have the option of Chase Young and Simmons, I want Simmons, man. Like, I know Chase Young, he's good. He rushes the passer. That's what he does. But Simmons could do that too. And then he could cover a tight end like a Kittle and, whoever other big tight ends they got out there. He can, go back at a safety position. He could play linebacker. I mean, he plays all these other positions. I mean, you got to have this guy on the team, and he's an absolute game changer, man. We could get guys that could rush the passer if that's all they do. We could get guys that just do that. Simmons, like, you said with that speed, what he ran, like, I think that was like, yeah, he was like faster than most of the 50 wide receivers that were running the field on the combine.
Yeah, it was the second fastest 40-yard dash by a linebacker ever. So he was zooming.
That's insane. Got to get him on the Giants, man. I don't care if they had the number 1 pick. I wouldn't trade down. I just draft him.
So I think we're all on the same page, and I know Michael Strahan had said he was on this page last year that the Giants defense really needs that dog. The Giants defense needs a guy that offenses are like, okay, how do we take this guy out of the game plan? Because right now we don't have anything close to that. And so I think, as much as Dave Gettleman says you can't force need, I do think we're in a draft where the most impact players, outside of the quarterback position, are on that defensive side of the ball. Obviously, that question comes up to Chase Young, Isaiah Simmons, or as I think Peter just messaged us to ask, Jeffrey Okude. And I think there really is a case for all three. I completely agree with Anthony. You can't draft a guy based on his 40 time alone. We're talking right now about Evan Engram, which is obviously a whole other slate of issues, but his raw measurables from the combine are part of what made him such a sexy pick for a lot of fans. I don't think I've seen anything from either Young or Simmons that make me say, this is a guy who won't make it as in the pros. This is the guy who might not have what it takes. This isn't a guy who's gonna come out day one and make our defense something that it's not right now. But between the two of them, I think I have to go with Chase Young. I got a chance to watch him in person against Michigan State the last weekend of October. And my God, against the run, he was drawing two blockers, and they were running to the other side of the field. Against the pass, you saw those pictures against Wisconsin where he didn't put up any numbers. He was drawing 3 linemen. I do think Isaiah Simmons. I think we saw basically Isaiah Simmons closer to his ceiling than we necessarily saw from Chase Young. Isaiah Simmons was probably with the most creative defensive coordinator in football, in Brett Venables with Clemson. And I do think it's harder to translate in position to position in the NFL than it is in college, just with the difference of the athleticism on the other side of the board. So, given how outstanding Chase Young has been in what he's seen and how big he is and how strong he is, I really don't see how the Giants pass that up, unless there are holes everywhere. Unless we're blown away with a trade offer that we can't refuse.
Like, okay, see, here's my opinion about the whole thing is, let's just say you have Simmons and Young there at 4. I don't care. Like, I'm only going to be pissed off if they somehow draft pass up on one of those guys to draft like an offensive tackle because it's a deep offensive tackle class. If you have a chance to get an impact player, you got to get an impact player. I mean, if they have to friggin' figure out a way to trade up for get that dog on defense, like Simmons, for example, or even if it's one spot, you got to make that trade because those are the types of guys that can revolutionize your defense. I mean, look, the Chicago Bears drafted Roquan Smith in 2018. I know they traded for Khalil Mack a couple months later, but when they drafted Roquan Smith, that was like, yo, this dog on defense is going to change this dog's here. He's going to change the mentality of the defense. So you got to get some swagger on that defense. You got to get a guy on that D that's going to come in and basically the rest of the guys are going to rally behind him. So whether it's Young or Simmons, like I'd be fine with either one. And I'm not going to be mad if we get one or the other.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. One or the other, like I'm fine. If they get Chase Young, I'll be happy with that. Obviously, like you mentioned Roquan Smith. I mean, what a difference maker, what a game changer he is. That's what I see. Like when Simmons come over here, because you could put him at all these different positions, and obviously he played all these positions in college, so he's a smart dude. So he can understand the playbook. He can go all these different positions. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, like a guy that understands the game. And I think the question they asked him was, like, oh, what position do you see yourself playing in the NFL? He's like, defense. That's a great answer, man. Just throw him on there, man. I want all 11 of them. I want 11 of those kind of guys on the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, that was an awesome quote, but we also talked about potentially trading back and getting offensive tackles or whatever. I want to know, for all of you guys, what do you think is the furthest that you'd be happy with a trade backwards? Because some people are happy if we trade back to 15 and take an offensive tackle there. Me personally, I don't really want to leave the top 10. I want to go back to 7th the latest because I want to still have at least a chance of getting an Okudah or an Isaiah Simmons. So what do you guys think? What is the furthest you would trade back?
All right, man. I'll look at the draft board because I got it pulled up here. So you have the Giants at 4. You have Miami at 5, the Chargers at 6, Carolina at 7, Arizona at 8, Jacksonville at 9, Cleveland at 10, and the Jets at 11. And the reason I just read off all those teams is because you look at it right now, like the Chargers, Carolina, Arizona, Jacksonville, Cleveland, the Jets. Those are that's like what, man? 5 or 6 teams that are going to be in the market for an offensive tackle. And I think 4 of those guys are going to go top 10. And I've heard 4 could go top 10 from someone that was at the combine last week. So if I'm trading back, I'm orchestrating a trade with a quarterback needy team. So like Miami, who's got 14 draft picks, moving back one slot, you can still get a couple picks. The Chargers, I would go ahead with them. Cam Newton, depending on how he pans out, like I would trade back with Carolina maybe. So like 2 or 3 spots at the most, but I'm not messing with that Arizona, Jacksonville, Cleveland, or New York Jets range because those guys I know are going to want an OT. So you don't want to risk them jumping ahead of you. You got to be smart about this and trade back like 2 or 3 spots at the most.
You're exactly right. Miami. I would go that. That's my limit. I would go Miami, and that's it. If they want to, give us a bunch of draft picks for that one spot, whatever, like, let's do that.
Will, what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's a really tough board for the Giants, and for exactly what you've been saying. You look at the board, you look at precedent. What position do teams do teams say that I'm going to give up the capital I need to get my guy, quarterback? Who are the teams that are looking for the quarterback? 5 and 6. So it's not like they really can sink deep enough to the draft to get to that 8 or 9 spot, which is really where I'd probably be most comfortable picking because you got those 3 quarterbacks, you got those 3 eight caliber defensive prospects we were just talking about, and then you got 3 or 4 offensive tackles, let alone like a couple wide receiver prospects like CeeDee Lamb or who Anthony used to really like, Jerry Jeudy. I think you could still be comfortable at this guy in this draft that the back of the top 10 is where you're still going to be able to get your guy, and there aren't really those teams in the back half of the top 10 who are going to be willing to trade up. I think the 2 teams right now that are dark horses in the quarterback conversation, who you just mentioned in Carolina, and also the other, what was it, 1996 expansion team? Was that when the Panthers had their first season? But the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Jacksonville's trade today and their general direction does show that they might be going in for Trevor Lawrence and going full tank for this year. But they're an interesting team as well. So, I mean, I guess if you're going back to a pick like number 9, and I'm also by the way, we're talking about those 3 day one starters. Don't underestimate what Derek Brown could do for this defense. And I hated the Leonard Williams trade as much as everybody. And I hate, this 11 defensive tackles defense that Dave Gettleman seems to have his eye on as much as everybody. But Derek Brown doesn't miss tackles. He can really stop the run. And you line him up with Dexter Lawrence, you get your pick back for Leonard Williams. You get that cap space that you can invest elsewhere. That could be the wall. And then you start to build the back by spending money. So there are some options. But again, the more you move back, the more picks you need. I'm not moving back to more than 10 unless I'm getting a 2021 first.
I gotta say, you brought up Derek Brown, so I want to touch on that for at least briefly. I think that would be a bad pick. I just think the Giants have been investing way too much into that defensive line, and eventually they're going to have to start investing elsewhere. You think about a third-round pick this year into Leonard Williams. You got a first-round pick last year into Dexter Lawrence. You got a third-round pick the year before that into B.J. Hill, and a second-round pick into Dalvin Tomlinson the year before that. So I think eventually you just got to move on. I know Derek Brown is like a hell of a talent, and he's an excellent run defender, but it is a passing league. I think you have to prioritize a pass rusher or a cornerback way before you prioritize getting another run defending defensive lineman. So when I saw the report that the Giants were interested in Derek Brown, I honestly was pissed at it. And if that ends up happening, if they end up drafting Derek Brown within the top 10 picks, even top 12, I'd probably be really, really upset about it and would probably give up hope on Dave Gettleman and the Giants' direction heading in the future.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, man. If they trade back to get Derek Brown, they better trade back to like 35. Like, I do not want this guy. I mean, listen, I understand he's a good talent, but listen, we got guys that we could get that can make a huge difference on this defense, man. Hopefully, he don't mess this up.
No, I mean, I certainly hear the counter arguments. I mean, I thought the defensive, and don't forget, you're talking about the investments. Don't forget about R.J. McIntosh and Chris Slayton, who's still in the practice squad.
Right.
Trying to do his thing. I was surprised that they got Dexter Lawrence last year. I thought, B.J. Hill looked great. He looked like a real steal from the third round. R.J. had shown some bright spots, and then you have Dalvin Tomlinson, who probably last year even outside of maybe Lawrence was our best all around defender. I was surprised that they drafted Dexter Lawrence to get started, but you're coming up on Dalvin Tomlinson's contract year. And you've got a decision to make. Maybe you can get a third round pick for Dalvin Tomlinson or something like that. And if you do think that Derek Brown is that much of an upgrade over Dalvin Tomlinson, and you think you could get something like the Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh tandem that took the Rams to the Super Bowl instead of taking the Rams to being the seventh best team in the NFC last year. I think there's upside to that. And right now, I do have a hard time seeing the Giants seriously competing for a playoff spot in 2020. So I can be patient. I don't think necessarily we need to use every asset we have to make the team better in 2020. And if we get a couple seconds or that first round pick, I'd be okay with it. Provided that we salvage some value of from the rest of the assets that we have at that position.
Well, you're picking in the top 5, right? So it's just best that you do your homework on all those guys that are like the top prospects in the draft. And why? Because let's just say, let's just say some major shakeup happens. And I think something big is going to happen on draft night in the first round, especially because someone's going to trade up for Tua or Herbert, honestly. And the Giants are going to be kind of just sitting there. You got to do your homework on all these guys because then you're going to know the positives and negatives. Because that guy's on the board, you could be like, hey, how do we want to do this depending on how the draft board has shaked out so far. So it's going to be interesting to see. And speaking of getting your guys, I mean, free agency starting in 2 weeks. I'm excited for it. Will, I'll start with you this time. What's the one positional, need that you're looking at in free agency, the one group that you think this team needs to, and the one player this team needs to bring in?
Yeah, so I think more Now, before I step back too much, I'll try to just answer your question. I think on offense, we're pretty much set. I do think that there's that physical wide receiver that would make us a lot better. But outside of that, I think on offense, we've got NFL caliber players at every position. I also would like to see a running back, too, that the team would be comfortable giving touches to give Saquon the rest that he needs on the field. Defense, I think we need talent everywhere. I think right now you look at the defense, and I can really point to one position where I'd say I'm comfortable in our starter for 2021, and that's Dexter Lawrence. I think when you really look at it that way, there's question marks for every single other starting, 10 of the other 11 positions. I don't know how many times they can say the same thing. So, whether it be that cornerback of Byron Jones or that edge rusher, obviously Clowney's going to be at the top of the market, Fowler not far behind. There are holes everywhere. So defense, to give the same answer as Isaiah Simmons recently.
Yeah, I think same thing, defense, but I'll be a little more specific. I think just sign a nice veteran cornerback, whether it's at the top of the market or not, whether that is a Byron Jones or somebody else. Let's just get a veteran presence to be the cornerback, somebody reliable. They don't even have to be like a really good player, just at least average so that we do have some reliability in that secondary because, last year we had games where we had everybody playing like they were top 5 worst cornerbacks in the league, and we were giving up career days to like 5 quarterbacks in a row at one point, and that was really bad. And I think just get a nice, solid cornerback in free agency. Don't overspend necessarily, but if they want to overspend, Byron Jones is obviously the top name. Chris Harris Jr. is also a pretty good name. He would fill that slot cornerback role that we haven't really had a lot of consistency at in recent years. So cornerback is the one position that I'm mostly looking at.
Yeah, Mike, I was going to say, Anthony, you left off Mike's favorite player, Prince Amukamara. Bring him home for a redemption tour, man.
You got to love the princes out there, man. But, I agree. Like, with a quarterback, you got to bring him in. You know what I mean? You got to get a guy there to, teach these young players how to play the game. But, to play devil's advocate, let's just say Evan Engram, like, they trade him. We're going to need an upgrade at tight end. I don't want to spend the money on tight end, like I said before, but if they have to go that route, what about, like, an Austin Hooper that played really, really well, like, on Atlanta with Matty Ice? I don't know how much money he would command to get him over here, but I think that would be a really good, really good ad.
Yeah, I agree. If they do trade Evan Engram, Austin Hooper is going to be the top tight end on the market, and that's definitely a name that the Giants would have to involve themselves with. But that's only if they trade Evan Engram. Other than that, I don't really think there's any need to sign a tight end, maybe a backup tight end to compete with Caden Smith.
I'm going to be a little bit of a cold water guy on the Austin Hooper idea. There have been a couple exceptions in recent memory, really Hall of Famers like, Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, Greg Olson, maybe that next level. But I feel like tight ends are a position that take a lot of beatings, and you don't see guys really producing on that second contract. So I'd be less excited about the Hooper idea. I'm excited that the team's finally going to be moving on from Red Ellison's contract. Hated that contract from day one. Hated the fact that the contract became a contract for tight end 2 when they invested in the same position on day 1 of free agency as they did on the round 1 of the draft. And I think that, the difference between what Ellison brings to the table and the next, the replacement level talent, that Caden Smith and Scott Simonson right below him isn't that substantial. I think Simonson's going to come back on another one of those 1-year vet minimum kind of prove it deals. And then I think that, anything else you need from the position, you can get from the waiver wire. You can get from a guy, from some sort of project in the 6th round or something of the draft. So I don't think the tight end's really a position where we have the most need for improvement. I know the Patriots can get pretty creative with their tight end packages, and I'm sure that Joe Judge is going to take a little bit over from Belichick's book in that respect. But I'm really excited with the personnel we have. And I don't think, I don't think that we'd be able to trade Engram and get an asset back that makes up for what we'd have to spend for an upgrade in free agency. So I'm good with what we have on that, in that respect.
Will,
Well,
Austin Hooper's only like 25 years old, man. Like he's still young. I know he's going into his second contract, but he's like right there. He's not like he's not an old duck, man.
How many games did he play last year? I'm not asking to be like,
I think it was 13 games, if
13
my
games.
memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's just it's a position that you see guys get beat up. Like, remember, Kevin Boss wasn't much older than he was when he had his like 11th concussion. I mean, it's a position where you can see guys really lose their speed, and then Jimmy Graham disappear. I mean, Jimmy Graham was certainly older, but it's not a position. I'm worried more about hits than number of sunrises and sunsets.
I know what you're saying. NFL, man, not for long.
Well, here's my opinion on Austin Hooper is, look, you have Caden Smith, who's shown to be like somewhat competent. He's still growing into his role, obviously, for a guy that was on a practice squad like before the season even started. Engram, we discussed at the beginning of this podcast, is great. I think if you go with a guy like Hooper, you're Caden Smith out of the picture entirely. That would be more of a luxury pick, and that's great, right? Because you can never have too many playmakers. You get Engram and Hooper. You're running these two tight end sets that they ran with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez back in the day in New England. But at the same time, like, I want to see the money be allocated in a smart manner. So if I had to pick like one position that I would like to see the Giants go after and one player, I would say a guy like Danny Trevathan. Why? Because you need to have that veteran presence on defense, right? And Danny Trevathan, when healthy, he's probably, I want to say, like a top 10 or top 15 inside linebacker in the game. The guy's a quarterback of the defense. He's not going to blow you away with speed, but he's going to bring like a physical mindset, and he's going to be able to tutor these younger guys. And I don't think he's going to break the bank either, right? So it's going to be, you got to be smart about how you do free agency, how you go about it, because you can't just throw all your money in one place like the Falcons did, and they ended up in like a friggin' cap crunch that's going to kill them for the next couple of years. You got to be smart about it, and you got to structure the contracts in such a way where front load the money, right? Front load the deal so these guys get their guaranteed dollars, because that's all these players care about, quite frankly. And this way, after like, year 2, year 3, or year 4, you're able to get out of that deal if they don't perform.
Yeah, like Danny reminds me of Antonio Pierce. That would be like a really good signing for the Giants, man. You're right, man. They definitely do need somebody like that in that middle of that defense.
So are you bringing up Danny Trevathan as like a transition to the Packers smack talk time, or what exactly is going on right now?
Sorry. No, I'm just, I'm just suggesting Trevathan because, like, I've seen this guy up close for the last 4 years, and so he is a guy that you can trust in the middle of your defense. Like, he's the type of guy right now where he would come in and he would basically be like Patrick Graham's best friend from day one, and Graham would delegate a hell of a lot of responsibility to him, and he'd be like the assistant coach of that, or assistant like coach or coordinator of that defense. So it would really work out. It's a move that a lot of people will be like, what the fuck at first, but they would be like, yo, this is, it's going to pay off dividends, honestly.
Yeah, I think the upside, to that move is Antonio Pierce. I don't think that's very likely. I think the downside is more along the lines of Jameel McLean from a few years ago, who was, coming over from that much better Baltimore defense, and then coming over and being, instead of being defender number 9, he's expected to be defender number 2. And I'm not sure if how well. Look, he makes us better, and we need a lot of guys who make us better. So I don't hate it. The idea that Mike likes apparently of Prince Amukamara, as much as that's my heart talking more than my head, sign me the hell up. I loved Prince. I remember week 4 preseason in 2014, he wasn't dressing, and I saw him in the tunnel, and I just started, they were playing against the Patriots, and I started smack talking the Patriots like I tend to do, and being like, "Yo, guys, those guys haven't won the Super Bowl in like 9 years. That's a long ass time." And of course, they won the Super Bowl, that year after coming, on that Malcolm Butler interception. But but man, I loved Prince. He's a really good guy. He always had a smile on his face. He always good with the fans and the kids. I would love to see him finish off his career as a Giant.
I would too. That would be like a perfect veteran cornerback signing, like I mentioned earlier. Prince Amukamara would be really good in that role. And I remember him and Antrell Roll on that defense back then. And I remember they used to joke around with each other. I know Prince Mukamar is a very religious man, and I remember when he finally got married, the pretty funny comments that Antrell Roll made about the new swagger that Mr. Mukamara has. So I'll never forget that. That was some good stuff, and I would definitely welcome back a Mukamara with open arms.
Yeah, it was, and basically the Bears cut Amukamara a couple years or a couple frick, dude. They cut him a couple weeks ago, not because like his, like he was getting old or whatever, because he's still like 30 or 31, I think. But like they cut him because like they weren't about to pay $9 million for this dude, even because they have too many damn other needs. So it's like they considered, they got rid of Kamara. I think that's another smart signing you got to consider if you're Gettleman. Bring him back in. Moving on, what's just as we stick with the free
let me
agency
jump in
talk.
with one other Prince Amukamara factoid. Do you gentlemen know the names of his family members, his sisters specifically?
No, are you stalking them, dude?
No, I mean, I learned my draft trivia when the Giants draft guys, so I'll give it to you. It's Prince, obviously, who's the football player, and then Princess, Promise, Peace, Precious, and Passionate Amukamara. So those are all such positive words. How do you not want that in the locker room to fix a culture?
And the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I think that's his cousin.
Well, he's from a tribe, because like Nigeria, they're like split up into tribes and whatnot. And I think he's from like the southeast part. So like he's supposed to be chief of a tribe like when he goes back one day, because I think like his granddad right now is chief. I forgot what tribe, man. But like yeah, he's gonna be.
Was like they.
I don't know, dude.
The tribes.
I don't know, man. But anyway, moving on. We talked about free agents we want, guys. Anthony, I'll start with you on this. What are some free agents that you were like, we need to avoid this guy and do it because like they're gonna F up from day one?
I'm really hesitant on Jadeveon Clowney. I know the Giants have reported interest on him, and I honestly have this weird gut feeling that the Giants are really going to be involved with Jadeveon Clowney and maybe end up landing him. I think they're going to throw the contract at him. It's just whether or not he accepts it or if he wants to go elsewhere to a competitor. But Clowney is one of those players that's got a lot of inconsistency and injury issues in the past, and as dominant as he can be, it's really not about that. It's about how dominant will he be, and that's always the question mark with Clowney. I mean, he was such a freak coming out of college, and he had all that hype, but he never really lived up to that. He is an elite run defender, but he's really not a stud pass rusher, and I think that's really what we need desperately is a stud pass rusher, and I don't think Clowney is that. So that's kind of one of those guys that I'm really on the fence about.
Mike, what do you think, man? Who are you avoiding in free agents?
Avoiding. Maybe like Everson Griffin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a little bit older now. Like, I'm Minnesota. I mean, I would probably stay away from him. But, I mean, what are we going to end up, like, having the chance to pick? Like, I don't understand, like, who are we going to have, like, available to us? Everybody's getting tagged left and right. Unless we make a trade, like who are we going to able to get? There's going to be like slim pickings out there for us, unfortunately. Maybe JPP, maybe he comes back with his like 8 fingers. I don't know.
Yeah, and look, like I wouldn't want Everson Griffin because look, the Giants, they've invested too much into the defensive line. And Griffin's not look, Griffin's and the Vikings, these guys, they're not parting ways because they can't come to a contract. They're parting ways because they themselves are dealing with their own cap crunch, and they got like $3 million in cap space. And so they're going to have to let some of those players go to save money. And so naturally, Everson Griffin was one of those guys that was at the top. Now, me personally, like one guy I would just straight up avoid is someone like Josh Norman or Emmanuel Sanders. And the reason I would avoid both of those guys is because number one, they're like in their mid-30s. I don't want to see a Gettleman Josh Norman reunion because Norman, let's be real though, Norman was good for like 2 or 3 seasons, and then this dude went to friggin' Washington and just totally fell off. All right, so you got to avoid Josh Norman. Regarding Emmanuel Sanders, look, he's 33 years old. He doesn't have much left in the tank. I'm not okay with wasting money on these veterans that have already proven something. and they're just going to take up time from guys that are going to be part of this team in 2020 and beyond. Whoa, who are you avoiding?
Sorry, guys. I'm just looking up who's leaving the the Panthers and the Cardinals, just to make sure we don't make those mistakes again. But no, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think we're not gonna fix this team overnight, even today, and we're not gonna frankly fix this team with this proper free agency. So rather than give you a player, I'm gonna say Nate Solder. And I'm not talking about the specific Nate Solder, but we're avoiding looking for that guy who we think is because he's the best option available. We need him, and we're going to pay whatever we can for him, and we're going to be stuck trying to figure out what to do with that contract 2 years from now. I think we're trying to fill holes. We're trying to maybe find a guy who can start for 2 years as an inside linebacker. But we're not looking for the answers. And I'd rather see the Giants necessarily. I'd rather see the Giants be prudent than be aggressive, especially for a guy like Clowney, who may once he gets the bag, who knows what he's gonna really want to bring to the table. What I've said about Clowney is he does not strike me as a 100% attendance at OTAs kind of guy.
I'm happy you mentioned the Nate Solder contract, because after I said Clowney, I went and I looked again at the free agents list, and I saw Jack Conklin, and that's someone that there's a lot of Giants fans who really, really want the Giants to sign, Jack Conklin, and I'm really not about that. I don't want to tie up another $15 million on an offensive tackle who is at best an average pass blocker, so that would be my true answer. I want to stay away from Jack Conklin. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily hate it if they sign him, just because it is a major upgrade at a major position of need, but I don't think it's going to work out. I didn't think Nate Solder was going to work out, and I think that would be just Nate Solder 2.0 there.
Oh, Conklin, he's going to get like more than the 15. I mean, Conklin's going to break the bank, and I think right now he's going to probably get 17 or 18 million a year. So it's going to be way more expensive than what you signed Nate Solder for. I mean, I swear, we trash talked the Jets last week. Let the Jets have him, even though the reports are like that he's not going to sign with them. Let some other team overpay for him and let him become their own problem.
Yeah, he's a good run blocker, right? But he can't pass block for shit. Why would you want him? You want him to protect him?
Well, if you don't sign Conklin, who's going to protect Brady from the right?
Yes.
Yeah, they'll draft someone like Ben Barcher or whatever, the D3 offensive tackle. That's going to go in like round 2 from Minnesota. But moving on. So I heard a great tidbit this week, guys, from my Rams source. I have a source with pretty much every team for our first-time listeners. So we're going to be dropping all sorts of tidbits on here for you guys over the next couple weeks. Now, I heard that Rams are expecting to not return Dante Fowler Jr. or Corey Littleton. So what, would you guys go after them or just straight up be like, hell no? I mean, I would say probably Littleton I would make a play for if you miss out on like some of the good linebackers in free agency like Kukowski, Trevathan, Blake Martinez.
I'd definitely be in on Corey Littleton, and I'd at least check the price on Dante Fowler Jr. because he's still young. He definitely has raw talent. I just don't think he's ever tapped into his full potential. But I think a lot of that has to do with the scheme that he was in. And he was stuck with the Jaguars. And then obviously when he went to the Rams, he definitely improved a lot. But he still hasn't really hit what his full potential is. But I think maybe, even another change of scenery might help him. But he's, again, one of those players that I think would be a really good number 2 pass rusher. And you would want someone better than him and have Dante Fowler Jr. on the opposite side. So maybe not give him a lot of money unless Marcus Golden walks in free agency. Then I think Dante Fowler Jr. might be an upgrade there. But he's definitely not someone I want to break the bank for, but I'd definitely be interested in maybe signing him.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that move. Like I said before, like we might be only available to get, certain guys like, these guys, like the second tier guys. And if that's a guy we got to get, maybe we have to get him. I mean, we have the salary cap to kind of fill a couple of spots there, so maybe we go that route.
I'm a Gator fan, so Dante Fowler. I hear his name and I get excited and I get nostalgic too. So, I don't want to say anything negative about that guy, but it's a real tough situation. I agree with a lot of what you're saying on Conklin. Back on the offensive side of the ball, just because I don't think the upgrade over Conklin over Gates versus whoever they're going to be developing, hopefully behind him from the draft. Is necessarily worth that price tag, given where the Giants are and given the limitations of what that one player can do for them. On defense, there's going to be a position where we're going to have to make an overpay. It could be at corner. I'd be less inclined to do that because I do have a lot of faith actually in some of the young guys on the team. So I'd be inclined to look at one of those linebackers. I think you're nailing all the right guys, and I think it comes down to how the market looks. I'd rather see the Giants sign a guy in the second week of free agency, even if it's not their first choice, but they're comfortable in the deal or they have a prove it situation, than break the bank in like a Nate Solder type situation where they decide they have to get their guy no matter what because they can't. They'd be too embarrassed to go into the season without that personnel. So, I'll compare Dante Fowler to Marcus Golden. I was blown away by what Golden did. It was a great value signing for Gettleman from Gettleman for sure, but I'm not sure I really want him back. I think back to Keenan Robinson, who's a guy who had his injury history. He had a great 2016. They're like, okay, finally he's over the injury situation. Let's bring him back. Let's run it back. And then he did absolutely nothing and couldn't get it done the next year. I'm worried there's going to be one of those situations again. I don't think Golden's an every down player. He was at his best coming in for pass rushing situations. I think Fowler can contribute more on the field than Golden. So I do think there are upgrades to get from outside of the team. I think it depends what the decision is with Leonard Williams too. But there's got to be a decision that's going to be made. I'm probably not going to like the numbers about it, but something's going to have to be done to make the team better.
I agree with you. Like with the cornerbacks position, I got faith in them too. I think it had more to do with Belcher's system last year that they looked all confused and they were just, running like all over the place. It looked like they didn't know where to be. Like I think these guys got talent, and I'm hoping Graham comes in and gets these guys in the right spot.
Yeah, I agree. I have faith in them too, and I think Betcher was the main issue on defense last year for the cornerbacks. I know that we really lacked a lot of talent on that defense, but a lot of it was young talent that's progressing. And I think back to plays like Cole Beasley's 3rd and 4 slant route where he's lined up and DeAndre Baker is lined up 12 yards off the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 4. And I think that's a scheme problem and a coaching problem more than anything. So most definitely, but I still do hold by what I said earlier. I think stand by what I said earlier, where I think a veteran cornerback that could at least help these guys and take some pressure off of them because they're so young. It's hard to give them a full plate and expect them to eat it. I think give them a solid veteran to take some pressure off of them and let them grow at a less speedy rate.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, but I think you look back at 2 years ago or even 3 years ago or 4 years ago, you had guys like Cody Sensabaugh, Ross Cockrell, B.W. Webb, guys coming in off the street, not being that terrible. B.W. Webb is one of those underrated Gettleman plug and play signings. I given what we paid for him, obviously he's not a starting caliber player in the NFL, but we gave him like $1 million or something like that to be CB number 4, and he covered some wide receiver twos, over the course of the year. So I don't think we really need anything better than that. I think Baker's going to get better. I think Sam Beal's going to get better, but I'm also really excited about Corey Ballantyne. I know he was like the really sexy pick last preseason. Obviously, he's had some personal issues, and adjusting from Newberry. Where did he go? No, I'm thinking of Corey Washington. Washburn. Thank you, D3. But that's a tremendous learning curve to getting up to NFL speed playing defensive back, and I think Ballantyne's got what it takes. So I think we've got 3 options. I think we do need a 4th, but I don't think the 4th has to be like a CB1 or CB2.
Yeah, Just it's gonna be an interesting couple of weeks. Anyway, moving on to our mailbag segment, which is my favorite one because we get to answer a great question from Troll God. So, gonna put Will on the spot here in a couple of minutes. But we asked the fans to, or you guys, the listeners, to submit questions. First off, guys, thanks for all your support. We did a great episode last week, crushed it with nearly 100 downloads. So we're definitely growing. Thanks for your support. So anyway, first question is, what's the furthest down the board from that Joe would be willing to move, assuming an appropriate draft haul, from Chris Whalen on Twitter, which is at C_Whalen88. So, Mike, I'll start with you. I know we kind of touched on this, but like, if you got a big haul, man, how far down would you want to move?
I will go 5 or 6, and that's it. That's it. I mean, why would you go deeper than that and lose out on like your player that you want?
Oh yeah, because Gettleman's philosophy was like, if you trade back to 8, you might as well have like, lost out on 4 other really good players, which he's not wrong about in certain cases, man. Because like, let's just say you trade back to 8, for example. What's gonna happen is there could be a couple teams that jump ahead of you that grab the guy that you thought you would be able to get at 8.
I'll say I agree to an extent. I don't want to move past 5 or 6. I think that's a perfect situation because you can pretty much still get the guy that you wanted at 4 there, since it's only 2 spots and those 2 teams are going to end up drafting quarterbacks. So whoever you want at 4, you can get at 6 if you can make that deal work. However, the furthest I'm willing to go back is to 12 with Las Vegas, because if they do end up trading both of their first-round picks to us, I would be a happy camper to have the number 12 pick and the number 19 pick, while they take whoever they want at number 4. Because at 12, you're still looking at a premier offensive tackle or an elite wide receiver prospect. And at 19, you're looking at maybe a linebacker there. Yeah, maybe Derek Brown at 12, if that's the route they decide to go. And then maybe an offensive tackle at 19. I mean, 2 first-round talents in exchange for 1 could sometimes be more valuable than just the 1 if it's, and that could be 2 first-rounders plus a second and a third for all we know. But that's the furthest I'm willing to go back. After that, I don't think so. Only saying back to 12 because they do have 2 first-round picks to trade. I wouldn't even go to 10 or 11 because they only have 1 first-round pick to trade. But I'd go back to 12 the furthest. I think you could still get some really good value there, especially if you're getting 2 first-round picks in exchange.
Yeah, I think I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I was talking about how I kind of don't like the way the board sets up for us. To move back to 5, I'd want a second-round pick. To move back to 6, I'd want a second-round pick this year and 1 next year. Anything past that, I'd probably want, either quantity of those, day 2 picks, or maybe a first-round pick down the road. To move down to a place like 12, I do it, but I need that. I need a lot on the table. I'd move down to 12. I don't think that 1 extra first-round pick would get it done for me. I get those those 2 picks, and then get maybe a second-round pick next year and a round 3 this year, something like that. All that or something like that, that probably moves the needle. So, it's hard to say just in a vacuum what I'm willing to do versus what I'm not willing to do. Unfortunately, the Giants do still have holes everywhere, and they do need those day 1 and day 2 picks to start filling those holes for the long term. So, I don't think we're one player necessarily away. So you got to listen to multiple ways of how to skin a cat.
Yeah, next question's from Troll God, who's got some crazy handle, but he's asking you, Will, when are you going to stop crying about the 2018 draft? So for some reason, he really wants this answer, dude. So go ahead, man. Floor is yours.
So I have to, at first just comment on the irony that, my name comes up and you get a dozen people saying, oh my God, when are you going to move on? It's like the Krasantine brothers or something of Giants Twitter. Obviously I was very passionate in 2018 and very, and very bold and loud saying that Saquon Barkley wasn't enough to get us from 3-13 to being competitive. And given that, I think it made more sense to build up assets for long term. I hate to say it, something's got to change. They didn't answer. They didn't fill those the holes on defense and the offensive line long term in 2018. So when they fill those holes, when they have a GM that shows some contrition for the mistake and that he's willing to learn, there have been some steps taken in that direction. But then we still have stuff like the Leonard Williams trade going on right now that makes me lose all sorts of all sorts of faith. I show up to every Giants game that I'm in town. I left a wedding, I remember 2 years ago from the Cape at 5 a.m. to get to the parking lot with my hangover or whatever, and the defense didn't show up. I want to stand up and yell for my team. And until I'm able to do that, I'm not going to be over the bad decisions that have stopped me from being able to do that. So I'm sorry, Troll God. I'm still pissed off. And I hope you guys don't hate me for it.
I love you, Troll God. Troll God, you're my number one fan out there. I love you. Willie Receipts, I was just looking at your profile, man. Mistagawan? My guy? Listen, I named my English Bulldog off of Saquon Barkley, okay? I love the pick. The number 2 pick, you got to go with the best running back in the game. Like, they neglected the offensive line for the past 10 years, bro. Like, they weren't going to turn around to one draft. You got to draft the best player available, and Barkley was the best guy.
Look, it takes Mike. It takes 3 or 4 years, right, to like truly see the fruits of the labor for a draft, man. But like, look, when I was writing for one website covering the NFL back then, I was like, look, you can go Saquon at 2, and you're gonna get an impact player, or you could go with a guy like Bradley Chubb or Quentin Nelson, who would have had like equally as good as an impact. But I will say this about the Saquon signing or the Saquon pick, is it was like we've seen teams, they invest high draft picks in running backs only to, by the time those guys get to those second contracts, like David Johnson and Todd Gurley, cough, by the way, and those guys are broken down. So like, I'm not going to sit here and I understand why the pick was made, because you need a good running back to win in the NFL. You need a good running back to take the pressure off your young quarterback who's still learning. But, there were definitely some other players that I thought you could have like gotten that still would have been impact players. But like I said, man, I ain't mad at the signing.
Like Darnold, you're talking about like Darnold. Like some Giant fans wanted Darnold. That guy, he can't even get on the field.
Forget Darnold. This is the fundamental argument. And
yeah, Darnold.
I wasn't planning on talking about.
He's giving everybody the coronavirus.
We started talking about the 2018 draft. I got to pour myself a scotch now to talk about the 2018 draft. But we're talking about what Dave Gettleman's saying, in that the risk of, if you trade yourself too far down, you risk giving up the player you want. And you go look at that draft board. There were 3 guys who were considered can't miss prospects. There were teams fighting to trade up for quarterbacks. There were a bunch of other guys like Roquan Smith and Mike McGlinchey and Denzel Ward who clearly made a difference. But here's the thing. In 2018, the Giants had an extremely top-heavy, financially insolvent roster. They had no long-term answers. They had a few stars, but they were an injury or 2 away from getting from getting everything derailed. And at the end of the day, you don't win. You don't have sustained success in the NFL without a core of homegrown talent. And you look at what some of the offers were reported that I certainly believe for that pick. You look at what the Colts just got from the pick behind us, the 4 day 1 starters that they were able to pick up. I think given the number of holes on that roster, the idea of saying we need this running back, and he's by far head and shoulders above the rest of the class in value, and it's not worth potentially getting an extra first-round pick or those extra second-round picks and starting to solve the problem that we've ignored forever, is terrible. And I'm not saying that there's anybody else at number 2 that would have been much better. I'm really not. I'm saying that especially when the team behind you is going to take a quarterback, it's downright negligent to laugh off trading down and not to get anything, even a 3rd round pick or something from the Jets to force their hand a little bit.
Yeah, but Will, like at the time, like people thought like Eli would have another year. They wanted to bring him back. They wanted to go for another run. People didn't really like look at it like so many holes. They thought they just needed a couple pieces and bang, right back in the playoffs.
Some people thought that. Sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish because I get
that.
I know some people thought that, and people were certainly entitled to their opinions. I had hoped that moving on from the GM and moving on from a broken process had shown me that the organization knew better than that, and knew that 3-13 with only really an injury to their wide receiver, and that's about it. It's not like they had a ton of injuries on defense. They clearly needed I thought all the signs had been there that the team wasn't in a win now situation, and I thought that the whole direction from that year was backwards. The Solder deal,
you look at the defense going before that. Dalvin Tomlinson. What's that?
2017, our defense was solid.
No, 2016, our defense was solid. 2017, we were 13, giving up that 4th and 26 touchdown against the Rams.
Damn, he got me there, Will. Damn it.
But 2017, the only guy left from that defense is Dalvin Tomlinson.
Okay.
We didn't add any draft capital in that for the future in that draft, and out of the guys we drafted in 2018, we only got like 1,300 snaps on defense from them last year. That's not a lot given the number of holes, and that's why I still think our defense is at least a year away. And Anthony, I feel like you've been patiently waiting and laughing, so I want to let you weigh in a little bit. But you know where we both stand. What do you take us home?
Okay, yeah, I definitely want to jump in real quick before we move on. But I think, Mike, you said it best yourself. You mentioned how bad the offensive line had been for 10 years, and you mentioned how we needed to turn it around, and we didn't have a core of players. And then you said, but we should have picked Saquon. But you mentioned it right there. I mean, Quentin Nelson was on the board. Everybody knew that man was going to be an all-pro nearly instantly, and he was. And you could have traded back a few spots and still gotten him at 5th overall. And you could have gotten an extra linebacker or something in the 2nd round. You could have gotten that core. You could have gotten that offensive line shaped up and better. So you kind of said it yourself right there. But I also want to mention real quick.
You're right.
You pointed out Will's bio. You pointed out the Mistaquan thing, and I want to say, because we did get a lot of heat on Twitter, Will and I used to have pretty hard beef. I'm not gonna lie. We used to not be so cool with each other, but eventually,
Anthony, I never had any beef towards you. I'll tell you that.
Okay, maybe it was a little one-sided. I did confront you at times, and I said there were some things I disagreed with pretty heavily that you did on Twitter. But I grew to realize, you're a Giants fan. We're all Giants fans. We've all got similar opinions. We just go about talking about them different ways. And I kind of want to tie that into this podcast. We received a lot of heat yesterday on Twitter over some fans who didn't like basically Will's bio. And you know what, man? Sometimes you really got to look past it. You got to listen to the argument, understand that we're all just trying to explain our own opinions, and just be more open-minded. I'm happy the 4 of us were able to sit here. We were able to discuss this. We were able to talk a little trash about it towards each other and come to mutual agreements. And I think that's really important to have some civil discourse. And I'm really happy that Will and we don't have any beef that we may or may not have had a while ago. And he's on the pod, and I think it was a great one. And I'm super excited and happy that we kind of changed Mike's mind a little bit on the Saquon pick.
I can't believe that.
Anthony, I love having an adult in the room who's 12 years younger than I am.
Yeah, I gotta say, Anthony, you said it best, right? Because that's the Brawl mentality, is just building things up, or just respecting people's different opinions. Now, what I am gonna do is I am gonna text Mike the trade offer that I personally heard that Gettleman declined from the Broncos. So, Mike, I'll text you that after.
Say it right now.
Well, hold on, dude. Well, I dropped this on the first episode that you were on, Will, and sorry, let me find this real quick. Okay, so
I got it off the top of my head. Believe me, this as Twitter knows, this is not something I take very casually.
I dropped it was the trade with Denver, right? And I'll mention it again, even though I did the first time. It says the Broncos offered. They were picking at 5th overall that year in 2018, and the Giants were at 2nd overall. So the Broncos offered Shaq Barrett $540, a 3rd, a 2019 1st and 3rd, and a 2020 2nd and 3rd. And Gettleman declined the offer. So you gotta,
So that's not the Albright report. The Albright report was maybe that's actually probably pretty similar in value, but it was number 5 overall, number 40 overall, and then the 2019 first. So not the 2019 second and third, but the 2019 first. But there's no Shaq Barrett in that. But the crux of the matter is there's a lot of draft capital there. And in 2018, remember, people might have bought into the team. They picked up 7 guys on the waiver wire after cut day. They picked up 7 guys on the waiver wire after cut day, keeping guys on their roster like Connor Barwin, Jonathan Stewart, Patrick Omame, Alex Tanny, guys who can't play football. There was not a foundation of that roster that, had a sustainable chance of winning. And I understand that, there were some 1-score games and, Gettleman made that argument. But you got to remember also, Saquon Barkley's 2018 season was as good as it humanly possible. He didn't fumble. He was like double the next best guy and runs over 20 and runs over 40. I mean, it was an unsustainable, and if he had an even average year, the team would have been 3-13.
Yeah.
Yeah, bottom line is like you can look. We're all emotionally invested, and Will's more emotionally invested in the Giants than anyone. But like, look, you're allowed to be a fan of a team and then criticize the moves they make. I mean, if you don't criticize some of the moves they make, I probably gonna end up calling you a homer. Like Mike's a homer, okay?
No, I love it.
But
I was a homer too for a long, long time, and I snapped when I thought that basically the whole 2017 season to me was a little bit for nothing. I do want to mention something a little more positive of my homerism, if I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead before we move on to trash talking the Patriots and Cowboys, dude.
Tell me, Will. I was about to unfollow you, but tell me, man.
Okay, I appreciate it. No, so I'm proud to say I've got a lovely girlfriend. She went to a few games with me. She was part of the Reggie White fan club with me in preseason, but that's a whole nother story. And I had my birthday a few weeks ago, and she bought me a New York, like a little book. It was like the New York Times, like best moments of Giants history. So they had all these headlines. And last night we were going through them, and I tweeted something at like 1 a.m., which was the 1927, the clip of the 1927 championship that the Giants won. And then I turned the page and I got to the 1934 game and it said 30-13. And I turned to my girlfriend and I said, "Oh, the sneakers game." And I want to know if you guys know about that. And if not, I'd love to share that story with our audience.
All I know are like leather helmets, and they were like, I mean, football leather helmets on and no face mask. You got to be a crazy mother.
Oh yeah, no kidding. So 1934, the Giants are playing the Bears in the title game, and it's freezing. The I think it was the Polo Grounds was the venue, and the ground was completely frozen solid. So the football cleats that the team was using weren't getting any traction. So the team was down at halftime, and there was a college coach who was sitting in the stands. The team called up to him and had him basically go out and get a whole bag's worth of basketball shoes so the team could wear those on the Tundra instead. The Giants changed their shoes. The Bears didn't. The Giants scored 4 straight touchdowns and won the 1934 championship 30-13. So my girlfriend or whatever, she was in like a bit of a mood last night, and I told her, "Let me tell you a story." So I take out my birthday present and I start turning the pages, and I'm like, "Oh, the sneakers game!" And I start scrolling down in the headline, and I find the description of the guy who went upstairs and got the sneakers and everything. So I want to shout out my father for making sure I was an educated young fan, and just tell you how excited I am to continue to learn about the Giants of the 40s, 50s, and 60s over the next couple weeks.
Haven't listened to the pod now. Let's get on to the trash talking segment, man. I know Mike's super excited for this segment. Here's the deal, Will. So it's been a long time since you were last on this podcast, and obviously one of the things we like to do when we end this thing is trash talk other NFC East teams and the Patriots, obviously, because I've never seen anyone deserve it more. But Mike, I'll start with you, man. Why are you trash talking the Pats and Cowboys this week?
Pats and Cowboys. That's what we're going with today.
Yeah.
They both suck. I mean, we both beat them. Like, didn't Tony Romo throw an interception against us and to seal our fate to go to the game? I mean, come on, man. Romo, like, now he's getting like $18 million to like talk about it. Why don't he bring that up? I want to hear his reaction to that game back in the day. What else? Like the Pats? Come on, man. 2 Super Bowls, they both get in, they both lose to us. I mean, there's no trash talking, man. They can't beat us in the big game. That's it. It's a wrap.
Well, I know you got plenty to say about the Patriots. I mean, if anybody's ever seen your Twitter profile picture, so why don't you go ahead, man?
Yeah, I mean, I know you borrowed a little bit of my shtick last week. Obviously Eli Manning's the only owner of the Patriots who didn't get arrested last year. Obviously the big difference between Tom Brady and Eli Manning. One of them kisses his kids on the lips. The other one won the 2 biggest games of Tom Brady's career. I mean, people know these things. I went to school in Massachusetts, like I was telling you guys before the podcast, and so unfortunately for the Patriots. The Patriots were kind of like, the new kind of thing. The older fans didn't have the Patriots on national TV, so they were Giants fans. So, I mean, they've had a couple decades of relevance. Brady's been great for them. Belichick's one of the most accomplished ex-Giants of all time, so you got to take your hat off to him. But there's no hate. We've had great. I love seeing the Patriots in the championship game, especially against us. There's no little brother I respect more. You got to take your hat off and appreciate a good thing when you see it. With the Cowboys, it's tough. I respect the Cowboys. They've been to a lot of NFC champs over the last 25 years, but then again, I guess you'd say the New York Guardians have been to a lot of XFL championships over the last 25 years. It's about the same kind of measurement.
Hey, give Dax all the money he wants.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I've been going to Giants games since I was like 4 years old, and in my section right next to me there's a Cowboys fan who splits tickets with her brother, and she wears her Emmitt Smith jersey, and she and her husband come, and we've got a great trolling rivalry. Some would say almost as much as me and some of the people who like the Saquon pick, but the Cowboys were awesome. I can't wait to see a picture of them in the NFC Championship game taken on the smartphone. But it's they're exciting. They're a good rival to have.
Most definitely good rival, but.
Okay, so the Patriots fans piss me off, right? Because like I talked to one Patriots fan, and this dude didn't even know what the freaking what was it, like the tuck fumble? He didn't even know what that was that like started the dynasty. So those guys themselves are boneheaded fans. The deal with the Cowboys fans is that every single year, like they go into the season, they're like, oh my God, we're gonna win the Super Bowl, and 2020 is gonna be no different. But then they just fall completely short. And I don't even remember they haven't been in the NFC Championship game in so long. So, like, they're not America's team. Like, that stadium, Jerry World, right? It's like America's bowl of, like, mediocrity is what it is. Like, mediocrity lives and dies in Dallas, ladies and gentlemen.
Sure does. Tom Brady, like, when he kisses everybody on the lips, when he first started that was the start of the coronavirus. Just so everybody... he started that shit. Be careful, people. Don't kiss Tom Brady on the lips, and you'll be okay.
Oh my God! Doesn't Ray Lewis do that? Or Deion Sanders as well? Ray Lewis, right?
Ray Lewis is too busy murdering his dog and like other people. Like I ain't messing with that dude. I will have nothing bad to say about Ray Lewis.
Usyk, do you know?
Love you, Ray.
The one other franchise you wanted to bring in. Do you know who caught the last pass Brett Favre ever threw as a Packer?
Wasn't it like Corey Webster or something?
New York Giants 2005 first round pick Corey Webster. Sorry, second pick I believe because we gave up our first round for Eli. But yeah, man, that was one of the greatest moments of my life.
You know what's weird though is I totally just guessed it was Corey Webster. Like, like I know but it was I miss Corey Webster too, dude. I miss who else do I miss? I miss Aaron Ross, dude, because you miss those old Amani Toomer, right? Those old school guys that every time they would play the Cowboys would just like punch them in the mouth and be like out of the way. Tony Romo, dude, he was definitely like he was freaking super overrated, just in my opinion, because like I never felt like he truly elevated the Cowboys to where they needed to go.
No, he didn't. He threw the ball over the middle all the time to Witten. And it always be
and Terrell Owens, who was like and Terrell Owens, dude, who was like Antonio Brown before Antonio Brown.
Yep.
But you know what?
What a mess he is in the head.
I love dumping on other teams as much as anybody, but I do want to take my hat off to Romo. Watching him at the line of scrimmage was like watching Picasso. I mean, he would line up, he'd see the defense, and you see it now translate in his broadcast career. And he'd start waving his arms like crazy, and they'd actually call a play to where the defense wasn't going. Eli, God bless him, he never quite figured that out. And I think Romo was one of the smartest, smartest quarterbacks I've seen recently. And he's an undrafted guy. You got to respect what the career he's made for himself. From what was he coming out of? Eastern Illinois, was that the name of his school?
Yeah, not too far from me, by the way. It just there's like 3 Eastern Illinois guys like in the in the NFL right now, and I think it's like Jimmy G, Tony Romo, and the GM Ryan Pace. But that's it. Well, 2 now because Romo's retired.
So Pace is right, of the 3 of them.
What up?
Pace is probably the youngest of the 3 of them.
Yeah, no, Pace is like 40 something. You know what's weird? Okay, so you know what's weird with Pace? Now he arrived in Chicago 6 years ago, And so if you put like a picture of him like year by year, you can see he's getting older, and his hair is getting much grayer, but he still got great hair in my opinion.
I bet
Anthony,
even
what's your
since he drafted Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, no, yeah. See, if I could go back 1,000 times over, like I would trade up for a quarterback because like that's the one position if you don't have like you're not gonna win. Like just imagine if we were sitting here in 2020 and it was Philip Rivers with the Giants, Eli was with the Chargers, Big Ben was with the Steelers. Like how much more different would things have been? Things would have been super different. We probably would have been here still making fun of Tony Romo and the Cowboys. We definitely would be doing that. Anthony, what's your trash talk?
Yeah, I just got to respond to something Will said. He referred to Tony Romo as Picasso. I mean, of making audibles at the line of scrimmage. I'm really truly baffled by that. I mean, if you're gonna pick a Picasso of calling audibles at the line of scrimmage, I would have thought it would have been like Peyton Manning or something. I think Peyton Manning makes Tony Romo look like a little pump or something like that at the line of scrimmage. A really poor artist. I don't know, man. He had his talented moments, but I don't think he's a Picasso of anything.
Maybe not Picasso then.
Listen, he was a Picasso. Like he hooked up with Jessica Simpson, Carrie Underwood. Man, he got my like. God bless that guy.
He was a Picasso in Mike's sense. He was a Picasso, Mike, in that sense, but he wasn't a Picasso when playing against the Giants.
He's still not a Picasso because he never got with Kay Adams, so. Well, not Picasso.
Look, he like you said, he hooked up with Jessica Simpson. He hooked up with Carrie Underwood. He hooked up with R.W. McQuarters. Like,
Yeah, that's right. But you didn't kiss him on the mouth like Tom Brady.
I think that might take us home, boys.
Bro, yeah, I was about to end this, right? Because this trash talking segment which was our best. It's coming off the rails a bit too much here. But guys, so thanks. Before we get out of here, just make sure you go check our website out. We've launched it. We had a massive launch on March 1st. We were 29th overall on Twitter. Go check out www.thebrawlnetwork.com. Mike's gonna have some articles up about the Giants. He released his first one about the offensive line. Go check that out. Feel free to comment as well. I'll be approving the comments, so please keep those appropriate. And then on the website, guys, we're gonna have a message board. Come interact with us like even more than you already do on Twitter. Follow the Twitter account at Giants Brawl. Follow Mike on Twitter at MikeTrainerMFT. Go check out Anthony's work on Empire Sports Media. Follow him at Anthony_Roberto, and then follow Will on Twitter at 27. That's TWENTEE7. He needs like no introduction because everybody knows him. He's a Giants personality, and was surprised yesterday when I gave him that role or that term. And follow me on Twitter at Usaid Koshal. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you next week with previewing free agency and all the contract and cap stuff and how to structure it. But peace out, guys.